thought it would be a good thing to talk to about someone who knows about this reintegration process, a fellow who went through it himself. You know him as John McCAIN, the former presidential candidate, of course, a prisoner of war during the Vietnam War for close to 7 years.
5.5.
I apologize. Senator, the reintegration process, you went through that. What does that involve?
Well, in our case, we had a different experience near the end where we were put together in large groups of prisoners. And during that period of time, the reintegration process sort of went on. I mean, we were able to talk to each other, be socialized and everything like that. So it was very different from Sergeant Bergdahl's experience by himself. And
did you have, for example, when you knew you were going to be released, and in fact you were released, how quickly did you talk to family members, or did you hold off?
As soon as we landed in the Philippines, we were taken to the airport there in Hanoi, and then landed in the Philippines, and we were able to talk right away. It's very different in Bergdahl's case. He went from this very tough situation to back in society, so to speak. And in ours, we had been together as a group. I spent a couple of years in solitary confinement, but that was earlier on.
So the last couple of years were not in solitary confinement?
No. And,
but do you read anything significant, Senator, that he has, even now, not communicated with his parents?
I don't know, honestly. I know it's been a very difficult time for him and great strain mentally. I know the period that I was in solitary confinement, it was pretty tough, but it's so different. It's hard for me, except to know that right now he probably deserves a lot of our patience.
Yeah. Did you know at the time that he might be oblivious to all the press and the controversies that developed?
We knew about it. Yeah.
Were you aware of the controversies over the Vietnam War and Americans getting jaded during your imprisonment?
Yeah, because we would have newer pilots shot down, and we would communicate with them, and we would keep up. And of course, we had this wonderful radio program, much like Fox. It was totally unbiased and fair and balanced.
So
we called it Hanoi Hannah. They would play this propaganda to us, and if you listen, you could read through the.
But you were aware of what was going on.
For a long time, no. Anything bad that happened, we were aware of. Anything good that happened. For a best example is that 2 years after the landing on the moon, I happened to have been listening to this. In every cell they had a loudspeaker, and I was listening to it 2 years later, and one of the anti-war speeches was being played. They played a lot of those, and the speaker said, "And we can put a man on the moon, but we can't bring the Vietnam War to the close." And I said, whoa, that was the first, But Martin Luther King's assassination, any bad thing that happened, they would tell us about that.
But most news was delayed coming to you, if you got it at all.
Yeah, it was delayed, but we communicated with each other. It's a very difficult much more difficult situation, I think, that he was in many respects. Although sometimes the treatment, in order to extract confessions and other things out of us, could be very, very brutal.
All right, let's talk about that, because the solitary confinement, 2 years of solitary confinement, you've been through that.
Yeah, but
and were beaten throughout it. But take me through that and how it could have affected him.
I don't know why Sergeant Bergdahl was beaten. I don't know what their rationale was, except maybe they were just cruel. In our case, they wanted to use prisoners of war as instruments to win the war. In other words, get a war crimes confession, denounce your country. The military information we had a very short shelf life. So they would put us through very difficult physical experiences in order to get us to sign confessions or make a tape, or because they used us, they wanted to use us as instruments of propaganda to affect opinion about the war.
Now, you, of course, were shot down, a pilot shot down.
Yep.
We get different stories about the sergeant and whether he left his base voluntarily, wandered off. Do you think, whatever the case, that you welcome a comrade home, but the means by which we got him home, you're not a fan of that?
I believe that when we joined the military, we agree to certain things that no one else in our society does, and that is you take a risk of capture, death, wounding. That's what makes the military profession so unique. And in my view, although I was certainly for a prisoner exchange, I thought that this exchange, in exchange for 5 hardcore, worst of the worst, gonna rejoin the fight, mass murderers, the top 5 people in Guantanamo, which the
There's
Taliban
some dispute
picked.
on that, Senator, that they were the top 5, but you're sure that they were the worst of the worst?
Well, I know that every one of them was judged too great a risk to be released. I know that 2 of them were mass murderers. I know they were in the Taliban government, the one that used to take women to the soccer stadium in Kabul and hang them from the goalpost.
Would there have been any of the ones that that you would have
I think
entertained
that
a
there's
switch
there's one of these guys that it's questionable about. But these 5
These 5
selected
were
by
not
the
the guys.
Taliban, I think, will return to the fight. They've committed to doing so, and I certainly didn't like the terms of their release. A year in Qatar, there will still be Americans in Afghanistan when they when they are released from Qatar. And believe me, Qatar won't keep them.
Real quickly, switching gears if you don't mind, you had said the other day, given these developments and given now what's going on in Iraq, that the president should just fire his entire foreign policy team.
Well,
Did you mean that?
Absolutely. They have
Does that
failed.
include the
They have
Secretary of
failed.
State?
Yes. Well, I hadn't thought much about John Kerry because
He's part of that team.
Yeah, I think that John should consider, not only because of that, but the failure of Geneva, the failure of the Israeli-Palestinian issue, the probable failure of negotiations with Iran on nuclear weapons. But the reason why I'm saying that is because this strategy has failed. It's been a total failure. And now they're really doing nothing more. We need to understand that if we don't help, and right now, not waiting for, although Maliki should step down and be replaced by a coalition government because he's lost credibility with the Sunni.
But is it too late for that?
Well, I don't know, but I do know this, that they will pose an existential threat to the United States of America, these people. And we need to do airstrikes, and we need to get in there quickly because the...
How about ground troops? The president apparently no to ground troops.
No, I don't think ground troops.
But airstrikes?
Airstrikes, maybe some special forces in certain situations. The Iranians are about to fill the vacuum. We do not want Maliki to have to turn to the Iranians, and the Iranians will then be running at least that part of Iraq. That is the worst.
But whose side should we be on? Because there's so many forces here, Senator.
We should be on the side of a coalition government of moderate Iraqis and people who are... The Iraqis do not want either these ISIS, and they don't want Iran. They want a free and independent
But even
country.
Al-Qaeda has questions about this group.
Well, it's the worst of the worst. They're already executing
So who do we
people
trust? We don't know
Mosul.
who's zooming who.
We can trust a coalition government. We know who they are. I would get David Petraeus and Ambassador Crocker on a plane over there to Baghdad, and they tell Maliki, you have to step down. We need a coalition government. But right now, we need to be doing things militarily to stop this incredible spread of ISIS throughout Iraq.
Hillary Clinton says that she had her druthers, she might keep troops longer in Afghanistan than 2016, and that she would entertain revisiting a lot of the things that we did in Iraq. Is she divorcing herself from this administration?
Of course, and she should. But I said in 2011 that we would fail in Iraq because of the total withdrawal, and we could have kept troops there no matter what they tell you. We're going to see that same movie in Afghanistan if we have a total withdrawal. And the president can declare the end of war, he can declare the end of conflict, but the people we're fighting aren't doing that. So what he's got is an exit without a strategy.
Senator John McCain, thank you very much. We'll have more right after this.